So good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders Podcast would like to introduce you to the talented real estate investor, entrepreneur, author of several books, speaker, and host of the podcast Respect the Grind. Welcome, Stefan.
Hey, Karen, how are you?
Fine, and you?
Doing well.
Good. So, Stefan, you're a multi-talented real estate investor, entrepreneur, and author. Can you please share with us and our listeners a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how far back you want to start, but when I was 16, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be, rich and famous. I think like a lot of kids do. We turn on the TV and we see rich and famous rock stars. We see movie stars. And I thought, that'd be great if I was like that. And I told my mom, I told my dad, I want to be rich. I want to be famous. I want to be a rock star. My dad said, that's a horrible idea. My mom said, that's a horrible idea. But hey, I support you. You can go to music school. So I went to the University of Manitoba here in Canada, started studying jazz, and I had a rock band, and I was a professional musician and a guitar teacher. And I finished off my degree, major in English, minor in music, dropped out of the business school, dropped out of computer science, dropped out of the music school, finished my degree with English. And after school, it was like 2008 back in the day. And I remember it was May 2008. I slipped into a post-grad depression because my entire life added up to nothing. My degree added up to nothing. So I ended up reading a little book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It said anybody could become rich if you learn to invest in real estate and build a business. I thought that sounds like a great idea. I sold all my music gear. I got out of music. I went full force into real estate as hard as I could go. And 6.5 years later, became a self-made millionaire through real estate investing. And now today I have a real estate portfolio. I've got several companies, and I also teach people how to start out in real estate and build their net worth through real estate.
Amazing. So starting out with just $1,200, you have built a multi-million dollar business. How did you go about this with just that amount of money?
Yeah, so $1,200, that was my very first deal in November 2009. I bought my first 2-bed, 1-bath house with 5 partners. And I put $1,200 down, and I learned how to raise capital and partner with people. So I was the guy who did all the work. I was the guy who found the property. I was the guy who got the contractors. I was the guy who managed the projects. And then I would get, rich multimillionaire investors to invest with me. And I'd make my money in a couple ways. I took an acquisition fee every time we bought a property. And I'd also take at least 50% of the upside. So, by doing that over and over and over again, hundreds of deals, that's how I amassed my first million.
Amazing. So what do you, as a real estate investor and specialist in the property industry, what do you believe separates you from your competitors or your competition?
In the real estate game or the education game?
The real estate.
Well, I think that, there's 3 things that we do very, very well. One is buying at 40 to 60 cents on the dollar. So, finding opportunities that are off market, death, divorce, downsizing. My team is very good at finding opportunity. The second thing is we really know how to raise money. So when we need money, we go raise it. I have a partner right now in a business. We're raising $6.5 million to buy 72 houses in the next year, which is super cool. And then the third thing that we do is build a personal brand. And so, it's branding, capital raising, and buying at 40 to 60 cents on the dollar. So it really comes down to negotiating, capital raising, and branding. Those are the 3 things that I do really well.
So that leads me to the next question, especially on the personal branding side. How do you feel social media has enabled you, and how do you feel that using all social media has impacted your business in a positive way? And what strategy have you used on these platforms to convert financially?
Well, I think social media is one of the biggest opportunities right now. If you're not on social media, shame on you. I look at my YouTube account, which I started in 2006, and I go, damn, why didn't I take this seriously sooner?
Yes.
I've partnered up with some guys. I own a social media agency now, and social media is not just some tool for little 16-year-old girls anymore. Social media is here to stay. It's a real thing. You get real customers. And the metrics, that I've seen are cost about $1 per follower across all platforms. So, if you do the math, let's say you're getting 100 followers a month, that's like getting $100 a month. And, I've seen people say, would you rather have $1 million or 1 million followers? Well, I think 1 million followers is worth more than $1 million, because those relationships and those people, if you can monetize that through business, services, products, whatever, that's where I think there's a lot of power. And, social media has been so hot for so long. I mean, even guys like President Obama became the president because of social media.
Yes.
Donald Trump became president because of social media. And social media is at this turning point right now where it's becoming so powerful. People are on their phones all the time. And we're even starting to see like social media censorship. We're seeing people getting deplatformed, which is crazy. That's how powerful it is now. It's a real thing. It's got real censorship. It's got real results. People are earning huge amounts of money and huge amounts of power from it. So it's not some little toy that little girls are playing with anymore.
Absolutely. So part of your entrepreneurial journey as a real estate investor has transitioned or cross-pollinated into teaching and helping others to get into this market. Was this a natural transition for you, and was this part of your expansion plan for your business?
So I always say this, Karen, I never wanted to be a teacher. I never wanted to be a coach.
Yeah.
What happened was I was just a guy. I wanted to make 10 grand, flip a house, move out of my mom's house. That's all I wanted.
Yes.
And I flipped a lot of houses, raised a lot of money. And suddenly there was lots of people. I was featured in magazines. I was winning awards. I won Rich Dad Hall of Fame 2014. I won Joint Venture Partner of the Year 2012. I wrote a couple books. I was featured, in the media. And suddenly I had people calling me from California, from Vancouver, from Ontario and Canada, all over the place, asking to coach and mentor them. And so it became this thing where, being an entrepreneur, people were asking for lemonade. I had some lemons, so I juiced my lemons and made lemonade.
Yeah.
And, we're at the point now where I've got students who won Investor of the Year 2016 in Canada, in Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazine. I've got some students who have bought 82 houses by the time they're 27. I've got some students who flip 30 houses a year, making several $100,000. I've got some millionaire students, some multimillionaire students, and I've got people still learning to flip their first house. So I've got a serious coaching company now called Black Card Elite Academy, which we market as Black Card University. And we have a program that competes with a modern university. So you can go to university and get your MBA. It'll take you 5 years. It'll cost you 150 grand. Or you can come to my company. We'll coach and train you for 5 years. You're going to learn how to sell, raise capital, flip real estate. And that's also going to cost you 150 grand. But at the end of 5 years, instead of needing a job, you'll probably be a millionaire by the end of 5 years. That's my guess. And if you aren't, I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. You have written several books in and for real estate market. Was writing and becoming an author something that came naturally for you, or was this in fact part of your plan? And was it a big challenge for you?
Well, it's a really great question. No one's ever asked me that, Karen. And what I did when I started in this game was I went to a branding seminar, and they said, hey, if I Google you, what's your Google ability? Do you show up on Google? And so I Googled myself, and there was nothing. There was like something about grade 10 basketball or something on Google.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, so I started a website, a free website, a Weebly website back in the day. And there was still nothing. And my website was done, but it had nothing on it. So I thought, well, I'm just going to start blogging every day. I'm going to write a post. I'm going to post my post on social media. I'm going to get to 5,000 Facebook followers or whatever. And I started, creating a buzz. So I did 120 blogs in 120 days. And in that 120 days, people were asking me to come speak at speaking engagements. I had people, I ended up raising tons of capital. People wanted to invest with me. I became this little star from just blogging every day for 120 days. And so I took the top, 35 blogs or so, and I packaged them into a book called Money People Deal, my very first book. And I just printed that book with the intent of raising money for my real estate deals. And I started, selling that book. We've now sold over 20,000 copies. And I was giving it out, selling it. And now, Money People deals in its fourth printing. People have asked me for coaching and capital raising, all sorts of things. It's just a never ending stream of people that want these entrepreneurial skills, because going to school and getting a job just doesn't work anymore. It's just not possible. There's no retirement anymore for anybody. So people have to create their own passive income, create their own retirement. They have to create their own education. The government's not going to help you. The universities aren't going to save you. And we're in the world now where everybody has to be an entrepreneur. There's no choice.
No, absolutely. That I agree completely. So what are some of your biggest career lessons and learnings and highlights that you can share with us?
So the one that I give to young people all the time, Karen, is you got to learn to sell. If you are somebody who is trying to be an entrepreneur, trying to be in business, real estate, whatever, you have to learn to sell. Yeah. You must learn to sell. And that's the biggest reason why people go out of business, is they're not selling enough. Yeah. They don't know how to sell. It's the biggest skill. And that's the number one thing people don't want to do. And it's the number one thing that they have to do. Yeah. So, I think I say to everybody, if you want to be an entrepreneur, go into direct sales for 2 years, make 100-something thousand a year. And when you got to that point where you're making 100-something thousand, you're now at the point where you can be an entrepreneur and quit your job. So many people I coach and work with quit their jobs, try to go into real estate or something without any sales training, and they completely wipe out. Or the other thing that happens is they get into entrepreneurship and they're completely stagnant. They have a certain level of business that they do and they're just stuck sideways. So number one is learn to sell. And then the second thing I'd say is get a coach. If you really want to be good at this, if you really want to make real estate or entrepreneurship or any of this stuff your thing, hire a coach. You need a coach. All the top athletes have coaches. All the top players have coaches. If you want to be good, you have to have a coach. And we get in our own head. We get buried in our own bullshit. We get inside our own minds, and you need somebody every week pulling out your brain, scrubbing it off, washing it with good stuff, and saying, hey, let's do it this way this week. Hey, come on, get out of your head. Don't freak out. It's going to be okay. And I've got several coaches for myself. I've got a business coach. I got a life coach. And, sometimes I have up to 4 coaches at a time. So I've always got people helping me. And there's too many people out there trying to be solo dolo. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't. So there's so much talk these days around the subject of leadership, specifically in the world of entrepreneurship. What is your opinion on this? And what would you say makes you a leader in your industry and separates you from your competitors? And how do you feel your leadership skills are applied when leading your team? And how do you keep those who work with you motivated and remain excited about the work, working with you daily?
There's a lot of questions there, Karen. Leadership is something I believe that people don't wake up in the morning wanting to be leaders, but they just start doing things and people start following them. Yeah. And I've noticed something about the human race is that we all want somebody to follow, even that's why we have religions. That's why we have Jesus. That's why we have God and Gandhi and Muhammad and all these leaders, because human beings as humans, we always feel inadequate. We always feel we need someone to follow. So the first thing is, I think a lot of leaders are people who are just doing stuff and they're just naturally motivated. They naturally do things and everybody else follows them. So I never wanted to be a leader. I still don't really want to be a leader. It's something that I do my thing, I play my game, and people come and they want to watch. It's kind of like those videos on the internet where people are like eating French fries and people want to watch someone eat French fries, or they want to watch someone play video games, or they want to watch a certain YouTuber. Well, those people are intrinsically motivated to do those things. Yeah. And because they're intrinsically motivated, or they have some motivation to do those, people want to watch that for whatever reason. They want to live vicariously through someone. So that's a big thing. Now, I think one of the biggest things with leadership is you have to be in the trenches. Maybe not all the time. You don't have to live in the trenches all the time, but all great leaders in history have been in the trenches with their troops. Yeah. And, I have a fine balance where I like to come in and motivate the troops once in a while, but I also come in and fuck things up. And I don't want to be the guy who comes in and messes up my team.
Yes.
So I try to be around enough, but absent enough so that there's some reverence, but then there's also some in the trenches. And those two things really, they really do go together. You have to have a balance between those two.
Yes, makes sense completely. So, shifting slightly from the property and investment world, this leads me to your latest book that you have written called Hard Times Create Strong Men. This book, having read it myself, is certainly creating waves. Can you please share with the listeners as to what motivated you to write this book? And can you please share with us, for those who don't know, what the book is about?
Yeah, so Hard Times Create Strong Men is a book that I wrote completely by accident. I never wanted to write a men's book. That was never my goal. I never woke up in the morning and said I want to be a men's coach or anything like that.
Yeah.
What ended up happening to me was I was fasting in the jungle last year for 18 days in the jungle. So I didn't eat for 18 days, came out of the jungle, and my young 20-year-old employees, 20, 21, 22 years old, were complaining. I don't like you. You're mean. This isn't my dream. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
All these like feminine, like almost like 15-year-old girl complaints that you'd expect out of like a teenage volleyball team. I don't know, teenage girls volleyball team maybe.
Yeah.
And so they're complaining to me, and I couldn't believe the bullshit these men were saying. Like they were having like a mental breakdown because daddy left for some time. Yeah. And I came back to the office and I'm sitting there and I hear these guys complaining and I go, what the fuck is wrong with these men? And I gave them a 6-hour lecture, how to be a man. It was 3 hours one day, 3 hours another day. And I said, I never want to do this again. I never want to have this talk again. So I went home and I wrote it down into a book. And 11 days later, Hard Times Create Strong Men was finished. It was done. And it was offensive. It was, what is a man in money, sex, religion, and politics? And it was a map on how to be a man. And I got really afraid of that manuscript, actually, because it's 151,000 words. It's big, it's long, it's offensive, it's vulgar even at some parts. And, I sat on it for 6 months, didn't know what to do with it, didn't have it as part of my business plan. And then I went ahead and just said, fuck it, and released it. And last November, I released a test run of 2,500 copies. It sold out almost immediately. And then we just printed up 10,000 more copies, and it's selling at a pretty rapid pace, which is crazy. And people are hungry. The women are hungry for this. It's never meant for women. It's a book meant for men.
Yeah.
But the women are hungry for real men. The men are hungry to become real men again. Fathers want their sons to be real men. And we have an epidemic in the Western world. We have fatherless homes. Everybody's fatherless now. The fathers are incompetent. The fathers didn't have fathers. So that whole tradition of masculinity and males training males and teaching males has been completely destroyed with the industrial school system, where you have a divorced boy, or a son with a divorced mother, and then he goes to school and all his teachers are female, and then if he doesn't act like a female, they drug him so he acts like a female, and then they tell him, oh, well, now you got to be gay and you got to march in the gay pride parade, and here's some lipstick and wear a dress, and now you're going to be transgender and trans neutral and all this stuff. And it's very confusing for the young men, and they're craving masculine messages. They're craving an adventure to go on, a battle to fight, a beauty to win. But the entire world is against masculinity right now. And I even talk about that with Donald Trump, how people, the public kind of hates him right now because he's a man and he's doing manly things that would be normal for a U.S. president. Maybe even 25 years ago would have been normal. And nowadays there's such a hate on for just men in general, masculine energy, masculinity, that it's almost men are becoming an endangered species. And this is bad for everybody.
Yes, of course. So that leads me to the next question in the book is there seems to be a lot of discussion and debate, or whatever you want to classify it as, around masculine and feminism. What I wanted to ask is, obviously Hard Time Create Strong Men speak a lot about this. Can you please share with us, why do you feel we are in what we call masculine and feminine struggle?
Well, I think part of that is designed. I think part of it is control to make men and women fight and make it's like these American soccer players, these U.S. girls soccer players that they're not wanting to fly the flag and they're refusing to go to the White House and all this stuff. Like they won the World Cup or something, and there's like this masculine and well, it's not even. I don't even really know if there's much coming from the masculine side, but there certainly is this big feminist movement, which I think actually hurts women. I don't think it helps them. And there's this divisiveness. They're putting everybody against everybody. It's black versus white, old
Yeah.
versus young, women versus men, rich versus poor.
Religion.
It's divisive, and it's not something that helps a person be better in life. I mean, uniting people is better, and working together is better. And I was thinking about, I'm working on a follow-up for Hard Times right now, and I realized that the opposite of feminism isn't masculinity. The opposite of feminism is marriage. And for men and women to work together is where the real power is at. But I think there's an agenda to keep people isolated, weak, sick, broke, poor, and stupid. And when you start uniting people and you start making families again, and people with religion to follow and faith, those people are hard to control.
Yes.
Whereas broken people from broken homes with broken ideology who are all trying to do it all on their own, those people are very, very easy to control. They'll never rise up. They'll never fight you. And I think it's very interesting. I was thinking about this morning, that you have rich, powerful women like Hillary Clinton, who is married and births her babies. And the rich white woman will tell the poor black women to abort their babies, kill their babies, divorce their husband. But no matter what, she stays with her husband, births her children, and does the complete opposite of what she tells the poor women to do.
Yeah. It's kind of scary.
It's super scary because they're actually, like, the richest people in the world are all families.
Yeah.
And they'll tell poor people to get divorced and be a feminist, and you don't need a man, and pay your taxes and put your kids in the government daycare and all this stuff. And it just creates a population of broken and weak people. Whereas the richest, most powerful people are all families. They're groups. They work together. Even if there's a marital problem, they stay married. They just go, whatever. Bill Clinton, he got his dick sucked by Monica Lewinsky. Big deal. Hillary Clinton just goes, whatever, we'll stay married. Could you imagine if she got divorced? She wouldn't even be on the docket for becoming president.
Yeah.
Right. If she got divorced, she would be, I don't know. Like, I don't know what she'd be doing, but she wouldn't be in the powerful position she's in. So I think that the rich, smart people are a lot smarter about that. And they go, okay, let's get married, stay married. Even if we don't like each other, let's figure something out. And then the stupid and the broke people, they listen to these lies that are told, get divorced and, abort your babies and all these things. And next thing you know, you have a complete sea of weak people that are easy to control.
Yeah, for sure. So that leads me to the next question. As a woman, and many discussions I've had with other women, and without imparting blame, do you think that men created feminism? And so what I mean by this is that women are still to a degree perceived as weak if they show vulnerability. So most women, especially in business, are more often in their masculine because they feel safer and more protected. This is something that women will naturally do to protect themselves against sexual harassment or not being taken seriously in negotiations. What do you feel about this, and how do you feel men can change this?
So what's the question? Did men create feminism?
Yeah. So do you feel that men are to blame, or not to blame, but do you think that part of what they've done is create feminism?
Well, I don't really know specifically who created feminism, but I think it comes from Marxism, and I think it comes from communism, where the idea is to make everybody equal and the same, and you paint everybody with the same brush. And the fact of the matter is, the human race and nature is not equal. It's different, it's diverse, it's got all sorts of things, it's complementary, it works together. And it's all united in a complementary and diverse way, but not so much in a let's just paint everybody with the same brush.
Yeah.
So I think feminism was injected as an idea into the American culture in the 60s. And I think that there were specific agents set up to subvert American values. I think it did come from the USSR. And I think it did come from the USSR as a weapon to soften and weaken the American people. And there's certain feminists that I think were completely inserted into the brain of the society, the universities, and that weakened the mind of society. And now it's been 60 years since 1960. And I talk about my book, Hard Times Create Strong Men, the 1940s, 1960s, strong men create good times, 1980s, good times create weak men, and then you got weak men create hard times in 2000 to 2020. So the 1960s is where feminism really started, and it was, I guess it was a breath of fresh air at the time. It was a new idea. It was the opposite of whatever was going on before, which was be married, work with your husband, work together. And now the message is, burn your bra and you can just make it on your own. And that's retarded. Like, that's the most retarded idea, because if you look at any sort of competition or any sort of dominance hierarchy, the top of everything is dominated by men. And that's not some conspiracy. It's not patriarchy. It's just, there are men out there like me who do nothing but work. So first of all, no men can compete with me because I only work. And then the women can't compete with the men who only work as well. So the top dominant positions in most things are dominated by men who are insane, who only work. So you look at that and you go, okay, that's crazy. Like, there's some crazy men like me who are hyper productive, and it's very difficult to compete with a guy like me who does nothing but work. So that's one problem. And then the other problem is, women wanting to come in and play man league hockey. I mean, just think about it, Karen. In the NBA, you got guys like LeBron. I think he makes like 120 million or something a year. LeBron James, best basketball player. Okay. He's like a beast. Men can't compete with him. He's this superstar animal. You've got guys like Ovechkin in hockey, Russian 6'5" beast from Russia who can pick up other men with one arm and throw them over his shoulder. So this guy's a magical beast. Yeah. And people like Ovechkin, people like LeBron, there are zero women that can compete with that, because the men can't even compete with it. And when you look at the female NBA, the top earner there is like 68 or 70,000 a year, compared to LeBron James makes 120 million. So it's not even a competition. And a housewife is worth $80,000 at home looking after the home. So that top NBA lady should go be LeBron's wife, and she would get ahead. At first, she would get half of his stuff. She would get $60 million, half of his stuff. She wouldn't have to work so hard. And then, she'd be making more and working less, which actually is a great formula. Hey, marry this guy and you can have half his stuff, work less, make more, and have a nice life. Sure, if you want to play basketball, go ahead. But I don't see a point in putting women and girls in competition with fierce men who dominate the shit out of everything. It's not fair. It's not fair. And that's why we didn't do that for a long time. And now when you put these transgender men in female sports, they get crushed.
Yeah, for sure. So that leads me to the next question. So as a man, how do you feel that you can help and are helping women to make a shift? And do you feel that we will ever get to a point where there is a balance and less of this power struggle between masculine and feminine? Yeah, sorry.
Well, I don't think there is a balance with masculine and feminine sexual energy. I think sexual energy is always unbalanced in that either the man has power if he has multiple women, or the woman has power in that she has exclusivity. So I don't think there's ever a balance there. But what I do think that there is a complementary nature. And I think that men and women can work together to make more and build a better life together. Yeah. I don't think that any amount of equality policies or special policies or employment equity standards or anything, I don't think any of that is ever, you can't regulate that into being better for women. Like it's just a completely ridiculous idea. I think that there are some women that want to play and compete with men. That's cool. There always has been those women, and even without feminism, you had ladies like Marie Curie. She was a chemist.
Yeah.
So there were some women, there's women like Boudica who slaughtered thousands of Romans. There's women like Joan of Arc. There's very few of them, but they do exist who do things. And I will say a lot of them get burned at the stake for being witches.
Yeah.
So that's kind of shitty. But, I don't think that, I think that men and women are playing a different game. I think men play a game and I think women are playing a game. And I don't think those games are the same. And to make them think that they're the same or to try to make them play the same game is the stupidest thing in the world. Like, let me give you an example. If you told a man that he was going to like birth and bear children, that's the stupidest thing. He doesn't even have the organs for that.
Yeah.
So why would you say to a woman with a weaker bone structure, hey, go in the army and fight Navy SEALs? Like, that's stupid. Men's bodies are designed for killing other men, and women's bodies are designed for like raising babies. Like, these two things are not even the same at all. And to pretend that they are, I think, is actually a little bit evil, because you're just going to create nothing but heartbreak, pain, suffering, and just the wrong idea in general. So I think that it comes back to making those things work together. Those two halves have to come together and work together, because that's what they were designed to do.
Yeah, for sure. So, in your own or for yourself, because you're obviously doing a lot for other people and supporting a lot of people through your books and through your coaching and everything else. So, for you, who has been your greatest role models and mentors, and what is the biggest impact that they have had on your life?
So one thing that really shaped my life was when I was 20 or 21 years old, I went and signed up to work with a guy named Bill Bartman, who was a billionaire, for 1 week in Palm Springs, California. And I spent $10,000, all the money I made in a year. I went into a year's worth of debt just to study with Bill Bartman. And I learned to raise money. I learned to build a loan proposal. I really got my entrepreneurial footing there.
Yes.
And, even today, I teach how to raise capital. That came from Bill Bartman. I have a self-esteem course that came from Bill Bartman. Bill Bartman just died a couple of years ago, bless his heart. But, he was an incredible entrepreneur. And, I didn't have a competent father. Both of my grandfathers were dead. I never met them. But Bill Bartman was almost like a real role model for me, a real, almost like grandfather figure. I just attended his workshops and I went to his things. I don't think he knew me personally at all. But the fact that I learned those skills and got an example of what my life could look like, that really shaped me in a big way.
Amazing. So, you've also been through some of your own personal challenges. How has this impacted and changed your perspective?
Which challenges? I'm going through challenges all the time, Karen. I'm writing Hard Times 2 right now, Hard Times 3, Hard Times 4. So, I'm going through some serious hard times, and I've been through some serious hard times. And I think that hard times do make strong men, and that leads to good times down the road. But which hard times are you referring to?
Well, I mean, in your own personal capacity, so whether that's been health-related things or whatever. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to highlight if it's not something you want to discuss, but, so I don't know if there's been any, really personal, physical, mental, emotional things that you've experienced that you would want to share, and how has it changed your view or your perspective?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working on Hard Times 2, which is called Dead Man Walking, Karen. And last year at about this time, I had cancer, and I had to beat cancer. So last year at this time, I had colon cancer. I had to beat that. I went to the jungle, fasted for 40 days, had to face my demons. I'd broken 7 layers of hell under what I thought was rock bottom. So that was pretty crazy. I'm going to be telling that story. That book's going to come out in the fall.
Yeah.
And, I think that life is nothing but challenges. There's always, you're either in a challenge, going to a challenge, or coming from a challenge. It's a never ending thing. Yes.
So what have been some of your greatest and personal career highlights?
You know what? I think one of the biggest ones was winning Rich Dad International Hall of Fame. That was super cool because that's the biggest personal finance brand in the world. And to win that, They give out 1 a year in Canada, 5 a year in the US. So that's a pretty special thing. There's more gold medals out there than Rich Dad Hall of Fame. And, I had to build a company and flip tons of houses and have the brand so they would recognize me for that. And that was super cool. That's what launched my coaching career. And I think that's super cool. And then I feel like, publishing Hard Times is actually another milestone that's becoming something I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
But
I feel like got a life of its own.
It does have a life of its own. And I feel like I was called to be a teacher some years ago. I never wanted to be a teacher. And I feel like I'm being called to become a healer. And I never wanted to be a healer. Don't want to be a healer. But, I'm a guy that I guess I fit in the gaps in the market where people want me. And they wanted me in teaching and coaching 7 years ago. And now I think I'm being called into the healing space, which is something that I never, ever planned to do, never wanted to do. But there's so many hurting men out there and hurting women and broken men and broken women that this problem is almost reaching pandemic levels where it's almost everybody is in so much pain and so much suffering. I'll share this with you. I fear I'm going to end up with a religion. Like, I don't want to start a religion, but that's really what religions are.
I think anything is possible with you, I have to say.
Well, it is. And, it's when people are suffering and they're in pain, they need to find meaning in their life. And that's what all the great religious leaders have done in the world is they've created a framework for people to navigate their pain and navigate the suffering in their life and experience joy and things like that. And I didn't wake up in the morning and say, this is what I want to do, but I feel like I'm getting pulled in that direction. And it's a pretty crazy thing because, religions like Christianity has 35,000 sects. So there's 35,000 flavors of that.
Yeah.
And, when you look at this, you go, wow, like there's so many different types of Christianity, types of religion. And I feel like the current religions of the world are failing people because they don't go to where the people are. I think a lot of them stay hidden in scripture and they stay in their old book and their old ways. And the people don't speak in that way anymore. They speak with swears. They speak vulgarly. It's always been the vernacular. The vernacular at one point was Latin. So the Bible went into Latin. And it went from Greek to Latin, and then it went from Latin into English. It went into German, whatever the vernacular is.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's another language barrier right now where there's so much great stuff in the Bible, and Hard Times to me is a gateway drug to the Bible. And what the religions I think are really failing at right now is they're not meeting the people where they're at. They're trying to sit in their towers and say, come to us and be holier than thou. But I don't think the average person resonates with that anymore.
No, for sure not. So that leads me to the second last question. What led you to start your own podcast? And what is the message or focus of your content in terms of the podcast?
You know what? I don't really remember why I started my podcast, Karen. I think it was a project. We just said, hey, let's just start interviewing people. Let's start this, lightning rod for reaching out to really important and powerful people. I think it was just a project. I just decided I wanted to create kind of a movement and reach more people. And so it was a pet project. And our first year we did 100-something episodes. The second year, I don't know what we're going to end up, maybe another 100, I hope. And we've had great guests. We've had Robert Kiyosaki. We had Ryan Serhant. We've had some really cool guests on the show. And it just keeps compounding. It keeps building. And what the podcast is about, it's called Respect the Grind.
Yes.
And it's about, it takes 10 years and 10,000 hours to become a master.
Yes.
So, it's about mastery. And we have people on the show who have lived in their cars and then they became multimillionaires. I've had people who were homeless. We've had all these different people who came from horrible situations. I had a guy who was in a brutal car accident, almost died. Now he's multimillionaire. So there's all these great stories, inspirational stories from different guests of where they started, what they were doing, how they got into what they were doing. And then, it's really interesting. At the end, I always ask them, I say, what do the young people need to succeed? And they always say hard work or something like that. And I say, you mean you got to respect the grind. So you do have to respect the fact that it takes 10 years and 10,000 hours to be a master. Because that's just what it takes, right? And I think the young people nowadays, the Generation Y, the Millennials, and Generation Z, I think we get this idea. You'll watch guys like Grant Cardone, and Grant Cardone is 61 years old or something. The guy's an old guy. You look at guys like Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary's in his 40s, bro. He's been going at this for a long time.
Yeah.
You look at guys like, anybody, Richard Branson. I think he might be 70. I don't know how old Branson is. Donald Trump is like 72 or 73. Yeah. So you look at all these guys who are killing it on the media game, and they're old. Yeah. And you got these 19-year-old kids or 18-year-old kids thinking they're going to be a multimillionaire tomorrow. Yeah. It doesn't work like that. It takes 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Right. And there's a big trap. I think that's another one of the social engineering traps here, is to get you on your phone so you're always getting gratified. You're always getting something. Yeah. And that is not how life works. And I write about that in my book, Hard Times. It takes 10,000 hours to be a master at something good. Yeah. And you can go play World of Warcraft and be a master in 500 hours. Yeah. So a lot of people get into that 500-hour game or the easier game instead of going into the long play game of, I'm going to go into sports, I'm going to go into music, I'm going to go into art, I'm going to go into business. All those take 10,000 hours to be amazing. Yeah. And people just go for the easiest thing. I mean, that's what human nature is. We go for the easiest thing, the least energy, because poverty is the natural state of humanity. Mm. And we always try to exert the minimum amount of energy to get the maximum result. And the reality is you have to generate more than the maximum energy to get more than the maximum result.
For sure. So that leads me to the final question. What are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs?
First one is learn to sell. If you don't know how to sell, you have no business being an entrepreneur. Yes. Second one is you got to be a skillionaire before you're a millionaire. So you got to invest in yourself. That's something that when I wasn't investing in myself, my career was completely non-existent. It was sideways. When I started pouring money into myself, I started really lifting off the ground. And then I think the third thing really should be, you got to respect the grind. It's going to take 10 years and 10,000 hours to be a master. Yeah. So play the long game and do the things you need to do to think in 10-year terms. You and I were talking about doing some PR. Well, I want to think in an 18-month term with that. Yeah, I don't want to think in a 30-day term. And the problem is we're always thinking in like 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 day terms. Mm-hmm. And realistically, you should be thinking in 100-year terms. Yeah. Where it's going to take you 100 years or it's going to take you 10 years. And when you think in 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 100-year terms, you make different decisions. Yeah. Right? Your decisions are way, way, way different. And I've got some real estate deals I'm doing right now. I'm not going to see really great money out of those probably for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm setting them up now. In 10 years, they'll pay off. And I've got a deal right now that I did 10 years ago, and it just bought me another couple houses. Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I did that 10 years ago. So now the deals I'm planting today in 10 years will be giving me, more houses. So it's all about the long play, the long-term game, and think long-term. And, like here's one final example with that, Karen. I invested $3,000 in a little how to write a book course years ago in 2011, 2012. I bought the course, How to Write Your Own Book, and I almost threw it in the garbage and just didn't do anything with it. I even told myself I wasn't going to do it. Yeah. And then for some reason, I ended up publishing Money People Deal. I made my own cover. I wrote my own book. And that book today, we sell copies every day, 10, 20, 30 copies a day. It's sold over 20,000 copies. It's built a multi-million-dollar coaching business for me. It's built my brand. It's got me all my capital. It raised capital for my business. And it's only been out for 7 years. If that little book keeps going, 30 years from now, I'm sure people will still be buying Money People Deal. Yes. So, it really is that long-term play. But if I just look at, it's $3,000 for the course, it's going to cost me $2,000 more to publish it. well, now you're just thinking small, right? You're
Yeah.
thinking wrong, and you got to think, well, you know, and same with books. I've got 2 more books coming out this fall. Well, guess what? They could be the biggest hits. I don't know. I'm going to test them. I'm going to try them.
Yeah.
And 50 years from now, people might still be reading my stuff. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you said, it's for the long term. It's the long term vision. I mean, it's the same in publicity. You know, people can't understand, like, if you don't invest beyond 3 months, you just aren't going to see the kind of traction you want to see. So it's
Right.
just a long term. It's a long term goal. Well,
Right.
anyway, thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to see where you are, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you.